Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the History of Video Games. My name is Wes, and I am here with Ben. How you doing today, Ben?
I'm doing great. How are you, Wes?
I am doing pretty doggone good. I had to switch it up there, you know. It's
Yeah. Yeah, we don't want to be predictable with our openings.
Right, yeah. Soon you're not even going to know what we're saying. It's just going to be like total gibberish just to throw people off.
A bunch of inside jokes nobody knows.
That's the hope. That's how we know that we've done our job and this is a good podcast.
Yeah.
But do you want to get us started off today with what you've been playing recently?
Yeah. I don't know if I've been playing that much new. I mean, it's still a bunch of StarCraft, still a bunch of Pokemon. Not as much Pokemon, honestly, but a little bit. I still haven't finished my ROM hack, but it'll happen. I thought maybe I'd take this time, though, to talk about the website, because I've been doing that a lot this week.
Yes, yeah.
So just give people a little bit of an update. I think for the longest time the website had about 7 episodes of content on it, and now I've doubled it to 14. So there's a lot more content, and then I also did kind of a redesign pass on every page. So even the old content should look better. There's less dead space. There's more GIFs. I just think it's been a good project for the past weekend, and I think I put quite a lot of extra work in and extra details in for people to go check out. So please go check it out. Let me know what you guys think, and I'm hoping you'll like it.
Yeah, we're always open to suggestions of how we can improve. I mean, we're using a Wix site, so we're going within that kind of template, but we're definitely happy to keep making it better and keep working on it.
Yeah, I want to add a bunch of stuff, but you kind of have to pick and choose your battles a little bit.
Right, yeah. The some of the woes of doing this as a side thing while we both have full-time jobs.
Yeah, and do other things too. So
right, exactly.
But yeah, I kind of want to put our top games of each year on there somewhere. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah.
And maybe what else was I thinking?
It'd be good to put our I think as our benchmarks, maybe some of the ones we mentioned in our 25th anniversary are like 10 out of 10 scores, or other ones that maybe if we thought of something else since we mentioned that might be fun.
Yeah, I want to put links to a lot of citations and stuff that we use. I want to put that somewhere. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done yet, but the point is it's twice as big as it used to be.
Right.
So go check it out. There's a lot of great stuff there. I think I've done up through like 75, including some of 75. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. But so I don't know, maybe that's more boring this week because I haven't been playing anything really, but what have you been doing, Wes? Have you been playing something?
I have been, and I don't know if it's necessarily anything new, but I do have 2 different games that I've been playing a lot recently that I can talk about. One of them, I'm going to touch back on Pokemon Go, which I am one of the holdouts. I joke that not that many people play it, but there definitely is still a pretty big dedicated player base. Bunch of different YouTubers that I watch because it's interesting when you're playing like a mobile kind of like game that you have to walk around. All the Pokemon Go channels end up sort of being like travel vlogs / Pokemon.
Oh, I didn't even think about that, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So a lot of them, like the big channels, because they're doing this, they want to travel because then they get more views, but also if they're doing well, they're making enough money that they can travel to all these events across the world. And it ends up being really cool. And we're in early February right now at the time of recording this, and there's a lot of cool events going on in late February. I think the 27th is like the official Pokemon Day or whatever.
Right.
So a lot of good stuff coming there. But one of the reasons I've been playing it a lot more, I mean, I play it every day just for the daily stuff, but that I've been playing it more than just the daily stuff I like to do, is they recently added like global PvP. There used to only be like if you're next to people and you like scan their code on their phone, you could do PvP. But now they have sort of like a worldwide league and like rating system and like ranks that you can go up and stuff like that. And it was something I never used to think about because like you got to really get into it if you want to be like good at PvP. But I had enough good stuff that I've been like winning a ton of battles with just like picking the oddball stuff that isn't the top like 6 rated Pokemon just to be weird and stuff like that. And it's a lot of fun. We'll have to see how I'm curious how long it'll last because like I find matches in like 30 seconds now at most,
Mm-hmm.
and it did just release like a week or two ago. So it'll be interesting. I'm definitely really into it now because it's so easy to get into a match, and there's also people who are like my skill level or worse, so I'm not just constantly getting owned.
Right.
Since I'm climbing up the ranks, it's nice because it's not like a win-based rank system. So like everybody's going to get to the rank that I'm at eventually as long as they keep playing and keep like sort of getting wins.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more like it's how many wins you get cumulative, but you don't lose ranks at the point I'm at for losing,
I
basically.
see.
So I don't feel like I'm totally overwhelmed, although there definitely are a lot of better players now that I'm like slightly higher in the ranks.
Hmm.
So for now, it's been really fun. It's stuff I didn't even think about, like type advantage and like this steel fairy type can use fire moves, and that makes it really interesting for some reason, and a totally different way for me to be playing this, and another reason for me to have to analyze every single thing I catch, even though I'm never going to use it.
Yeah.
So both good and bad, because now everything I catch, I'm like, ooh, would that be good for PvP? Even though like I play it a lot, but I'm probably not going to play it a lot in like 2 months or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's been really good. I still they don't always add tons of stuff, but they're making like progressive improvements, and it's one of those weird ones where because it's a handheld or a mobile game that I like playing daily, I'm like pretty content just with the slow,
Hmm.
constant progress they've been making since I started playing it.
Right.
And the other game I wanted to talk about is kind of like totally different. XCOM 2 is I've been playing a lot recently. Me and you talked about a lot, Ben, when we were in college. We would just get in like moods where it's like that's all we wanted to play, and we would
Yeah.
binge play XCOM games because it's like such a very specific brand of game.
Yeah. Something about that turn-based combat. It's like so good.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. And the way XCOM does it too with like their movement, it's very unique. And I had bought XCOM 2 a while back when it was on sale for like cheap and you could get the expansion with it. And so I played through it pretty much vanilla, but then I was like, oh, okay, I'll wait a bit, and now I'm going back and playing through War of the Chosen, which is the big expansion.
Hmm.
And I did not realize how expansive it is. Like, it's a whole new campaign. Like, my people get tired after going on successive missions, which didn't used to happen, I don't think, unless that's just because I always played on the wimpy difficulty and now I'm upping the difficulty, which could be. But it's crazy to me how much stuff there's going on. I need to look a little more into it, but there might even be like a Shadow of Mordor style Nemesis system in it.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah, because when it introduced one of the Chosen, which are like the big bad enemies who like show up over multiple missions that you have to fight now, it had like random perks and debuffs. Like it can't trigger Overwatch, which is horrible. And for for those of you who don't know, it's like if you don't have anything to do with your turn, but you have a good position, you can just tell your unit to say, okay, if anyone moves on the enemy turn, I can take a free shot on them. And this person just ignores all that, so that goes out the window. But then they have like a random debuff too, so they're a little easier to beat. And this one is like they take double damage to explosive stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm not sure yet. I'll have to see if that's more like once per campaign they just get a random thing because it seems like there's three distinct characters. But I'm excited to see if like I kill this one, if just another one takes its place that has different random stats or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm just scratching the surface of that now, but I'm excited and slightly daunted by how much more content it is. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. Man, what happened to the Nemesis system? I
I
used to think that was like so cool, and then
Yeah,
they made like two games, and they were like, nope, that's it.
I mean, Shadow of War was pretty good. It didn't get as much hype, I think, because it was pretty much like the same game, just with like sort of
Hmm.
minor improvements, but it was really fun.
Well,
And
that and it had a big scandal too, didn't it? It
oh,
had
because
like
of the
microtransactions or something.
microtransactions, yeah,
Yeah, in a single player game.
that's right. Yeah, and I didn't pay attention to that, so I was fine. But that's right. You could like get people for your team, like orcs or whatever, who you had mind controlled over to your team, and they were just like so much better if you bought them
Yeah.
outright, I think.
I think after a while they reversed that, but
They
it just
did,
didn't
yes.
matter. you know?
It's kind of like the whole Battlefront 2 thing where like,
Yeah.
I never played it, and I'm pretty sure it's a great game, but it just
Mhm.
permanently killed from its release. Like, it lost so much traction just because of all the microtransaction stuff and
Yeah.
all the backlash, especially in like that time that was going on around it.
But I love the Nemesis system. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah,
Basically, for people that don't know, like the enemies remember you, and if they kill you, they'll be like, "Didn't I already kill you?" and stuff like this. You know, it's like super cool.
right. And there's like chances for like some low-level dude who doesn't even have a name to become one of these nemesis and just like grow
Right.
over a bunch of levels and gain all these weird skills like I was talking about with the person from XCOM. It's a really cool system, and I wanted to mention to you while we were talking about Nemesis system, they have that in Warframe now.
Do they?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
and I haven't
Wait,
played
who
it yet.
even verse? That's like a boss that you would see often.
It's these people called like the Kuva Lich or something like that. It's a bunch of like Grineer dudes who are supposed to be like souped up on some kind of magical space energy, you know?
Yeah.
Which is
Definitely.
they just had to say that, and I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, I believe it. That's fine. I haven't got to play that yet, but it sounds like pretty similar to the Nemesis system in a very like Warframe way, which I'm all about.
Yeah, we gotta go back to that sometime.
It's such a time sink, but it's so good. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been playing recently. Did you want to get us over and start talking about our special topic for the day?
Yeah, let's do it. So, for today's special topic, I thought it might be fun to do another one of these. Who is the best company making games right now? Because we haven't done that since 1975. I think the episode was the first boss fight episode that we did way back in 75. And, you know, it's been like a year about. And last time we said Taito was on top. You know, Atari was probably number 2.
Right.
I was curious to see if maybe those have switched or another company's kind of breaking in. Obviously, Meadows Games was up there because we love them so much. So are they still doing stuff? You know, there's a whole bunch of cool things. So I kind of wanted to just run through a couple of the bigger companies, I thought, and what games they made, and then kind of get your opinion on them, and maybe see who you think is like maybe the top 3 or something we can hand out.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
All right, cool. Let's start with the one with the fewest amount of games, but I really like these games. Project Support Engineering. Do you remember them?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
what they did? They only had 2 big games come out since the last episode we did this at.
Okay.
One was Maneater, which I loved. And
Yes.
one was Knights in Armor, which was really cool and weird and whack.
Oh,
But
that's right.
Kind of funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to give them a shout out because both of those games I thought were pretty good, honestly.
Yeah.
Or maybe not like the best, but they were very original.
They were very original. Yeah, from what I remember of Knights in Armor, I watched it, didn't play it, but I didn't think
Right.
the gameplay looked like super fun, but the concept and just like the way it was done, it's just so different than everything else going on.
Yeah, it was such like a weird out there one, but I kind of liked it because of that. Then we have Exidy. They're kind of brand new too. I don't think we even talked about them in the last one that we did of this, but
No.
they had basically their racing games, Alley Rally, Demolition Derby, which was the Chicago Coin kind of shared one, and Death Race, the big one.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, just because of Death Race, I'm like, I have to mention these guys. That one was so good. For Meadows Games, they're still doing stuff. They made Bombs Away, which you played. You finally got to experience my Dropzone 4 enjoyment.
Yeah.
Cobra Gunship, which you also played. And then also, they had 2 honorable mentions. One was called Schizo, and 4 in 1 was the last. So,
One that we'll be talking about in the timeline today as well.
yeah, I didn't include stuff on today's timeline, but
Gotcha.
we'll include it maybe next time we do this. I don't know. But yeah, so mainly Bombs Away and Cobra Gunship for them. Then I think we get into the bigger ones now. So getting into Midway, we've got Gunfight came out since the last time. Seawolf, Amazing Maze, which you played. 280 Zap, and Tornado Baseball. So 5 kind of pretty big different games from
Yeah.
Midway. Some of them are like clones, so maybe we'll give half credit. Taito, you know, the number 1 current leading. They only came out with 5 games, or 5 notable ones. Interceptor, Speed Race Twin, Attack, Avenger, and Ballpark. And those last three, I don't think we played, but Interceptor and Speed Race Twin we did play.
And I think Attack, if that's the Jeep Gunner one, I did take a look at that one.
Yeah, you did play that one. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, so 3 that we played. I'd say of the 3, probably Interceptor is probably the most important or the biggest, but they're still doing stuff. And then we have Atari. They've come out with, oh god, can I count 14, I think, games? And a lot of these are like ones we've played too. We've got Crash and Score, Jet Fighter, Stock Car, which we didn't play, Stunt Cycle, Tank 8, Breakout, Indy 4, Cannonball, Flyball, Cops and Robbers, Le Mans, Night Driver, Outlaw, and Quiz Show from Atari. And basically in 1 year. So of the highlights in there, obviously Breakout is in there, Cops and Robbers, Night Driver, Stunt Cycle.
Right.
So there's there's a lot of them. I think we've probably played maybe like 10 of those. So a fair amount, but yeah, they've got definitely over twice the amount of any other company in this past year.
Yeah.
This is looking just at arcade games, by the way, not
consoles.
Yeah, but still, so they've been busy. And I included key games in there too.
Right.
So
fair enough. Basically the same.
Yeah, it's basically the same. There were like a couple other small companies, like Ramtech came out with like Hit Me and one other one, maybe the baseball or something. There's a couple others, but I think these are the main ones. We got Project Support Engineering, Maneater Knights in Arms, Exidy with Death Race, Meadows with Bombs Away, Midway with like Gunfight, Amazing Race, Seawolf, Taito, Interceptor, and Atari with a bunch. Breakout among the best, I would say. Night Driver. So yeah, what do you think, Wes? Who's sticking out to you?
I mean, it's tough, and I don't want to just go for like the I forget what the phrase is, law of large numbers, but
right.
I feel like Atari's just got too much going on for us not to say something about them. They, with Night Driver and Breakout both being in there for this section that we're looking at, those are both like pretty huge ones.
Yeah.
But it's Taito, I think they did a lot, but I don't think they're not still on top for me when I'm looking at this one. I'm kind of between like Atari and Midway for what my favorite is for this, and Meadows just because I like them, even though I know they aren't like actually the top, but I like all the stuff they're making. Yeah, I kind of agree. I feel like Taito, we really love them because of Speed Race and how amazing that was, but I don't know, I feel like with Night Driver, that kind of took over, it was like the next big thing. It wasn't a Taito game. It was actually Atari with Night Driver, in my opinion. Was the next big innovation in racing. Right, instead of them kind of doing that. And it does seem like they did a decent bit with like the light gun sort of games, because I think their Interceptor was also sort of a light gun game, or no, it just had peripherals and Attack definitely was.
Yeah.
And those were both pretty good games, but then like I ended up liking Cobra Gunship better than Interceptor, which was the Meadows game sort of version of that. Yeah, so they're not standing out to me so much. So I think I would give it to Atari, and maybe just because of everything. So they've put out such a volume of games.
Right.
But after, especially just recently looking at Night Driver, it really sticks out to me.
So I kind of thought you'd say that, because I think it's more obvious this time that Atari's just like in the lead.
Yes.
They've got the gold, but who has silver and bronze, Wes? That's the real question. I think that's the hard one.
Okay, yeah, that's true. And I think I already sort of gave it away. I think Midway's been doing pretty well. I did not like Amazing Maze. And now I'm blanking on the other two large ones that you
Gunfight
mentioned.
and Seawolf.
Right, which weren't recent, but Gunfight, of course.
Yeah, Gunfight was so good.
And Seawolf was also really good.
Stolen from Western Gun, though. Does that influence? I mean, it was very different, though, at the same time. It used microprocessor.
Yeah. And I remember saying when I compared those two, I liked the style of Western Gun better, but I still think the stuff that Gunfight did was really cool, with like the giant cowboys that so they could be like bigger detail, and the caravans and stuff that went up the middle of the screen. So I still think that's a really cool game, and also of course it's a very notable game in video game history. It's one that stood out to people. So that would be my silver for that, I think. And bronze is going to be contentious.
Yeah.
But it's got to be Meadows Games just because I like them.
Oh yeah, get them in there.
And like I said, it's kind of that Interceptor versus Cobra gunship in my head right now, where it's just like I like their version of it better. So that kind of puts them above Taito for me in this in 76.
Yeah, I feel like even the weird, or like the ones that aren't usually very important, like the bundled games, like Meadows had that 4-in-1 bundle game, right?
Right.
But even that one, it was like Flim Flam, which, you know, I want a Flim Flam. What was the other one? I'm trying to think now. It was
I think it was 2 different Flim Flam ones, and then it was also a Knockout, wasn't it?
I think it was Knockout. Yeah, it was Knockout, Tennis Hockey, Knockout Doubles. Tennis and Hockey were Flim Flam variants. But Knockout was also a great one. So like even their like kind of filler games, I'd say, or like, you know, one step above normal filler games, we'll say.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, and but I mean, we just love Meadows Games here. Everybody knows.
We do. Yeah. So did that reflect sort of what you were thinking too?
I honestly, so I thought definitely Atari was like number one. I really didn't know what you were going to do for the others, because I feel like Death Race, even though it's kind of the only Exidy one that they have that was like so good, like it is so good though. So I was like, that could be in there.
Well, to be honest, I just totally forgot as we were just talking about it, about Exidy. So that would be like, if I was being honest with myself, and also sort of having the knowledge that they're going to be a big company going forward, which is cheating a little bit. They're either like tied or above Meadows for third. I don't know. It's, yeah, but I don't want to change it now. I'll stick with what I had. But of course, Death Race and Exidy are very important, even if it is just mainly Death Race right now that we're looking at. That's the big one.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure. You know, I didn't know if Taito was still going to be there. So yeah, I thought that the second half of this would be pretty difficult, which is why I thought it'd be cool to come back to it now.
Right.
But yeah, so Atari, they're back in the number one slot. I think everyone kind of knew that just because of how often we talk about them, but it's nice to get a firm, you know, this is what Wes has decreed, so.
And I said it, so it's true. I mean,
yeah.
No two ways about it.
Do we have any Atari games today? No,
you know,
I don't think we do.
I don't think we do. So, give it a break. Oh no, we have one honorable mention from them.
Oh, we do?
Yeah. Coming up that we'll mention. But, you know, they're keeping up with it. They're doing like 1 or 2 in each of our episodes at least.
Yeah, definitely. So, why don't we take a small break and then head over to the timeline and we can actually talk about this stuff. Hello and welcome back to the History of Video Gaming. Let's jump right into the timeline. We've got an honorable mention here to start called Flying Fortress by Elektra, which came out sometime in October of 1976. By the way, we're getting into the fall now, the fall winter. It's going to start getting real good. I feel like it's already started getting real good, but...
I know, yeah, so it's going to get even better, I guess.
Yeah, there's some real cool stuff we got left in the end of the year here. But this is a bomber game where you have to hit targets on the ground while dodging and shooting planes in the air, which seems pretty cool. But there is a video of this on YouTube, and honestly, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on. So it's kind of reminiscent of like a Drop Zone 4, except the ground's kind of moving under you, and you're not just looping the same sky section over and over again. But I don't know. I think it's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on, but it's some sort of airplane shooting game.
Right. And then next we have the first game that I got to take a look at for this episode, and that is Lazer Command by Meadows Games.
Meadows Games?
Yeah, there you go. Part of the reason I was definitely biased in what I just talked about in the intro and putting them in third. And this came out the same sometime in October in 1976. So just to give some background about the cabinet itself for this one, there were two different upright cabinets. One was a larger one that had a green and yellow colored overlay. The green and yellow was basically just the sides of the map is what it colored. And a smaller cabinet that was black and white graphics, and on the face of it, it actually had some cool illustrations that the larger cabinet didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of these like quote-unquote futuristic-looking army guys and clunky tanks that had lightning bolts on them because they shoot lasers, and they were like cartoony and really funny, and it's a pretty cool graphic. There's not much color to it. It's just a two-tone, I think, but it's a pretty neat design. That kind of gives you the theming of it right away. But other than that, the cabinets were just fairly plain. On the side of it, there was like an explosion, and it said in blocky letters, Lazer Command. And the controls for it were just a 4-directional joystick that had a fire button on the top of it that you'd hit with your thumb. And then also another button just on the control, or on the main panel itself, that you could let you bail out, which I'll explain in a bit when I get into the gameplay of this. So basically, Lazer Command is a 2-player tank fighting game, but it has some twists that make it different than something like Tank from Key Games. There's a small maze in the center that divides both sides of the map, and there's also a setting for an expert maze, which is a separate level, which just puts like this really intricate maze in the center of the map. And you control the tank, but you also control like what I'm going to call a pilot, but what the flyer for this game calls a fuel pack. But it doesn't make sense to me that the fuel pack just moves around. And basically what you do with this is after your tank is destroyed, you don't like respawn somewhere. You just get out of the tank and you have to run to another tank because there's other tanks all over the map. So you run back, control the other tank, and basically you just keep going until time runs out, or until one player has destroyed all of the player's other tanks. And what's interesting about this is that it's not like lives in the sense where you have to get in the tank, shoot each other, and then die to win the game. If the other person just went totally behind you, all your tanks are actually on the screen, so they can blow up your additional tanks before you even get the chance to drive them. Which makes it this weird like balance of sort of like attacking someone's base, but also like a versus tank fighting game. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool. It's different than a lot of the stuff that we've seen going on in 76 so far. And so you can move the tanks manually, and you can also bail out even if the tank doesn't explode. So we had this great YouTube video of somebody going through and showing it. The channel's called the 8-Bit Pit if you want to check it out. And he was mentioning that you could even strategize and place these tanks in like different nooks and crannies or next to each other, and then just defend them if you wanted to play it that way. So there's even like a sort of higher level strategy layer to this that a lot of other games don't have. And basically for just going over the controls, you could only move in 4 directions, and you had to shoot in the direction that the tank was facing. The laser itself that you shoot moves pretty quickly across the screen, and you can only fire one at a time, or only one can be on the screen at the same time. So if you're really close to your opponent, you can fire pretty fast as long as it's hitting a wall and then disappearing. So getting into my ratings for this, for graphics, I gave it a 2.5 out of 10. Overall, it's pretty simple for the graphics, but there's a lot of stuff that I like about it. I don't want to skew it too high because of the color overlay, since really all it did was add a different color for each side. One was yellow, one was green. And also since it wasn't used for all of the cabinets that were sold for this, but it is a nice addition. But some of the features I did really like about this, despite it being simple, is that the tanks, though they weren't super detailed, one was white and one was black, so it was really easy to differentiate who was who. And also the scoring was a little sideways view of the enemy tank, and one would show up on the bottom of the screen for each one that you destroyed. So you know, as you get like 5 tanks destroyed, I think there's 10 total on the map, and you could kind of count up to how many you had left and also see visually on the screen because the tanks were on the screen the whole time. The laser shot is also really simple. It's just a series of dashes, but I do like that they stuck with the theming of it, and since it's a laser, it's not like a projectile that goes across the screen. The whole line of dashes stays on the screen until it impacts. So it looks like you got this huge laser cannon coming from the front of your tank, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And also following the same pattern as pretty much most of the other graphics I've talked about so far, the explosion on death is really simple, but it gets the job done. It's just kind of like looks like a big asterisk that has maybe like 3 different sprites to it or images to it that changes. And, you know, it does what it needs to do to show that the tank's exploding, but it's nothing like phenomenal. One of the more interesting elements of the graphics here, though, is that the pilot, when you're out of the tank, it looks like it's a flashing LED of a white light behind the screen, but I couldn't really tell because I don't know how it would shine through.
Mhm.
But it definitely looks different than all the elements that are actually like on the screen or like being digitally displayed. So I think that might have been a light behind the screen that just travels and follows your tank whenever it moves, and then also, you know, when you're outside of the tank, can move wherever your joystick goes. So if it was that, it's pretty impressive that it could be paired with the digital graphics and then also move on its own based on your controls. So I thought that was really neat. The sounds for this are one of the many things that I thought were really cool. The flyer advertised it as never before heard futuristic sounds. And I feel like we've heard that a lot, but this time that actually means that they weren't just Pong sounds.
You're right.
For once, the never before heard futuristic sounds were actually never before heard futuristic sounds. The laser shot sounds kind of similar to, like, if you think of the classic movie radar on a boat, on like a ship or a naval vessel or something like that. Just sort of like a blip in a radar wherever it shoots.
Mhm.
And I think it fits really well with the theming of the game of being like this futuristic tank battle. The death sound is also really cool. It's sort of like a spacey kind of explosion. It sort of reminds me of Galaga or Space Invaders in the way of like those, I don't know how to describe it, but like an oscillating like blip sort of noise that happens whenever you blow something up. And
Mhm.
I'm sure we'll have this playing in the background so you can get a better
Yeah.
idea of it than just me describing it. But both of those sounds I thought were really the highlight of the sounds in this game. I actually forget if I mentioned the score at the beginning of it, but it's why I gave this a 3 out of 10 for sound. The other sounds in it, which is basically just the engine sounds, are not that great. They're pretty simple, just kind of like clicking noises, and they only play when you're moving, but they started to annoy me pretty quickly when I was playing through it. I try not to be too harsh on these because sometimes it's just the emulated version you're playing. The balance of the sounds is not right, so like the engine sound is way louder than everything else. But either way, they weren't great, but the other sounds really made up for it and were really cool. For the gameplay for this, I gave it a 3.5 out of 10, which if you're following the typical Wesley scoring, that's like pretty high.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's part of it's just, I love how different this game is. Partly, I think I'm rating it highly just because of the novelty of it, but I also think it just has so much going on compared to similar types of games that we're seeing in 76. Like the fact that you have that strategy layer of how to plan out where your tanks are and like which tank you want to take next based on where your opponent is. Most arcade games in 76 just don't really have that sort of overarching strategy layer, I felt like. And
Right.
also, in contrast to the defense side of the strategy, you also have the offense side of it, where you have to balance, okay, I could just wait till they get back into a tank and keep shooting them, or I could try to get behind enemy lines and kill like 3 tanks in a row before they kill me, so that I'm up in the number of tanks that I have left. So there's just really a lot of elements that made this unique and made playing it multiple times seem like it really felt different, like you could do more with it. And pairing that with a pretty generous time limit so that there's multiple conditions to end the game, but it still felt like you could destroy all the opponent's tanks if you were good enough. Like, you weren't limited by the time. And it just felt like it worked together perfectly to make this like really new, fun, innovative gameplay for this genre. And for the relevance, I gave it a 6 out of 10. I don't really think Lazer Command is relevant for being like a well-known title, because it doesn't seem like it was super popular. And Meadows Games, though we love them, aren't really a particularly notable company when you're looking at the whole history of video games. But I think it just does a really good job of like even changing up the sounds. Like, it's not variants on Pong sounds that are in this arcade game. And also just adding those slight new twists to gameplay that make it a really novel type of game. So overall, I gave it a 3.5 out of 10. I love the mix of theming, the innovations they made, and that classic Meadows Games charm of it being just like a really interesting take on a type of game that we've seen before. I don't think it's the most well-known or impactful game, but because it's got that unique art on the cabinet, it's got that quirky gameplay that's just different and interesting. I really think it stands out from a lot of the other arcade games that we've been looking at.
I'm so happy that they're not disappointing us, you know?
I know.
Whoever Meadows Games is involved, I'm like, this is going to be good.
Yeah,
this one's definitely good.
I was actually just checking out one of our episodes because I like to listen to them every now and then, and we were talking about how Odyssey just kind of switched and went to the chip that everyone else was using. And we're like, come on, Odyssey, you're not doing that weird stuff. Yeah. That's the reason we like you. But Meadows, so far, they've been delivering.
Yeah, they have.
Always doing this weird, interesting stuff that's just different.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of their stuff, they take like concepts that they've seen from other people, but then they put their own spin on it. And it's so... It feels like such a better version of like Tank 8, for example, the Key Games tanks.
Right, yeah. And when you think Key Games was like, okay, here's Tank, and then here's other Tank. Not that Tank wasn't great. Like, they didn't change it up that much, where this is like, okay, what if we just really switched it up, kind of reinvented it?
Yeah, what if you could leave your tank, you know?
Right, and you were the pilot for multiple tanks.
Yeah, that mechanic is so interesting, and really, like you said, just adds so many more layers to the gameplay. Even like, I feel like moving a tank to the other side of the map and then leaving it there, going back and defending your own base, and then going back to it again, you know, like there's so many like interesting things there.
Right, yeah. I mean, it is really a simple gameplay mechanic, but yeah, like you said, there's just so much you can do with it that keeps the game different each time you play it.
Mm-hmm. And we should mention, I don't know if we did, but your pilot guy can move a lot faster than the tank. So like you can really kind of outflank people by leaving your own tank and hopping in a different one. So
right. Like if you knew you were going to die and you just got out early and ran back to a new tank, so you had the upper hand.
Right, you could get into your next life faster, you know, kind of. And also, I think the pilot like will go through walls, right? So he doesn't have to go around anything. I
think it was a little hard to tell. That's the one complaint I do have. Because it seems like it's just a light for the pilot, it's hard to tell like where it is on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Because I think it's sort of like in the bottom of the square, if you know what I mean, like the square tile that each tank occupies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it could go through, but I'm not positive.
I want to say it could, but
either way, yeah,
it was still cool.
Yeah, real fun one.
Yeah, that's gonna move me into the next one that I rated, which was not a fun one.
Oh no.
Yeah, I would say this is probably the worst game I've rated like all year, honestly.
Oh, well, I'm excited for a totally different reason.
Yeah. This is a Tracer by Sega, which is a light gun game at its core. And the reason why I thought it might be cool is it's the follow-up to Bullet Mark, which I think was a very successful light game for them. We just covered it as an honorable mention back in the day when we talked about Bullet Mark. But I was like, you know what? We've got a video of this one. Let's check it out, you know? But it really feels like this game was basically exactly Bullet Mark, except the cabinet was smaller and cheaper.
Oh, no.
I know, which we've had a couple of those situations happen. But yeah, it's everything about this was like, is this it? When I was like looking at it, I mean, even just from the cabinet the cabinet is like wood grain with nothing on it, essentially. I'm like, this is so boring. You do have 2 gun peripherals for it's 1 or 2 players, and they're kind of, the Tommy gun style, which we've seen a couple times, and I guess they're cool. But the actual gameplay of this light gun game is basically the gameplay of like the light gun games of the original Magnavox Odyssey, like years ago.
Oh no!
Like shootout and stuff.
Yeah.
Essentially, you've got moving things on the screen. I think there's maybe 4 different kind of screens that would pop up. You had airplanes, subs, ships, and another one that I couldn't even tell what it was because it was so badly drawn. I want to say it was maybe bombers, but they had these weird antenna things on them that made them look like bugs. And I kind of was assuming that the whole thing was like military themed, but it could have just been bugs, like,
right.
I don't really know. But yeah, everything looks like kind of bad. All the models, they don't look great. I would say that maybe the airplanes and the ships look the best. And there are like, they do kind of move in patterns sometimes, but other times they're just like static. Like I think the subs, there's like a row of them and they just move slowly from the bottom to the top and that's it,
Right.
And you could have, I think with the subs was the most models on screen at one time, which I think was maybe 10. So you did have a lot there, but they weren't really doing anything, There's not really animation for any of this. So they're just kind of moving along a set path. And there wasn't even like a crash animation when you shot somebody. They would just disappear. And I'm like, really? That's all you could do? On top of that, the gameplay was kind of weird too. How they did the scoring, I thought was really odd. Imagine you start out with like 100 points, and if you shoot something, you gain 10 points. Okay, it's like, okay, I understand that. But whenever you fire your weapon and discharge a shot, you go down 1 point. So, and you have like a machine gun. So like at a minimum, you have to fire like 5 shots at once or whatever. So your score kept going up and down and up and down and up and down. It was really hard to tell if you were getting better or worse or, who was going to be winning, because it went like wild crazy on the numbers.
Right.
So it was just really hard to tell what was going on, So yeah, it's not a good one. That's it. Not great. The whole time I was watching it, I was just thinking in my head, Attack by Taito, which you had mentioned before.
Right.
And that's the one you played. It seems way better than this one. This one was in black and white, Wes. I mean, come on.
Oh, no.
I know. I think it might have had like a blue overlay, but it was not a good looker. So, yeah, let's get right into the ratings, huh?
Oh, yeah, I'm excited. Let's get into it.
I feel like I didn't go too harsh on it. I gave gameplay 2 out of 10. You do have a lot of things to shoot at. They do move in different ways depending on what it is. Like the ships go left to right. The airplanes go in like kind of a diagonal pattern, like maybe from the bottom center to the right center, for instance. The submarines go bottom to top. And what was the last one? The bug things. I don't know what they did. Yeah. But so you did have a couple different things to shoot at. I have no idea if they were worth more or less points, but I don't know. You're just shooting a bunch of stuff. I thought with another person, this could be a 2 out of 10 gameplay game. For graphics, I gave a 1. Like I should have gone lower, but some of the models, I just couldn't even tell what they were. Like I literally couldn't.
Yeah.
Especially the bugs. I think it's weird because the ships and the airplanes I could tell looked like kind of nice. But then the bugs and the subs, I think they were submarines. They could have just been like weird box shapes,
Right.
And not really represented anything. But yeah, it was kind of weird. So just 1 for graphics. For sound, this one was kind of hard. You do have some sounds that the game is making, and I think they actually got a little bit annoying, but they were kind of unique and original. The main thing that you hear though when you play this game is the sound of the gun firing, and that sounds pretty good, I think, but it's electromechanical, so I was like, what should I do here? So I just gave it 2 out of 10. I wasn't really sure, but it wasn't like a great sounding game, but there were some interesting parts to it, especially the gun sounded nice, but again, that wasn't really the game, so
Right.
it's kind of hard for that one. And for relevance, I gave it a 2. Like, nobody cares. I didn't care. Yeah, it's just not good. Like, how could it influence anything? I think Bullet Mark was pretty successful, but this really did not do anything on top of that. And I think one of the things that was cool about Bullet Mark was, if I'm remembering it correctly, the gun, like where the people sat with the gun peripheral, was like maybe 5 or 10 feet away from the screen. So it was like this kind of really big, attention grabbing machine. Whereas this one was just like really small. The gun was like right by the screen. The screen was actually kind of indented in the cabinet quite a bit, which I'm imagining is just to get some distance between that and the peripheral, because the gun was like kind of attached to what would be a kind of standard cabinet, And
I think that layout was the same way that Attack by Taito was as well.
Right.
So I guess for like a smaller form light gun cabinet, that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, I guess so.
But it's not as cool and like visually interesting as that huge range that you get from something like Bullet Mark.
Right. And it felt weird because it felt like the actual TV, because it was indented and like within the cabinet, like to give it some space, it was like a smaller TV than on the inside too. Like smaller than even Attack, I want to say. It was kind of weird how it looked. But yeah, I was like, I don't know if this is going to influence anything. Like, I'd rather that the Magnavox light gun games influence things than this. So, yeah. For overall, I gave it 1.75 out of 10. I think that's still pretty generous. Because I don't know, there was nothing about this game that I thought was, like, really interesting. Like, I feel like I've seen all this before. I think, especially since we just did Attack, like, that was really heavily in my mind. And I was like, Attack is so much better. I mean, it had, like, colors. It had way better looking models. I mean, it placed you in some sort of world where you were in this desert thing, right?
Right.
And this had none of that. You're looking at a black and white screen with a bunch of random shapes on it and a score system that didn't make any sense. So I didn't even know if once you got down to 0 points, if you would just be done, or because that's supposed to be kind of ammo, right? So
right, yeah.
But you can continue to shoot, but you just are at 0. It's really weird. And it's also weird that the video I was watching, someone got basically only one person was playing, right? And the other person was just kind of playing like a little bit. And the person that was actually doing well got enough score for the bonus round, but then player 2 could also participate in the bonus round even though he had no points and didn't do anything to get to the bonus round. And I feel like the bonus round would be really hard to get to if you're playing 2-player because you're stealing each other's shots, right? So I don't know if they really thought this out.
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting one, and we can feel free to trash on Sega now because we're going to be praising them, I'm sure, in the years to come. But
yeah, they're not doing it yet.
They're not doing it yet. Now, all these light gun games were like, yeah, you're doing some stuff, but this one, not so much.
I bet they probably have different teams of people, just like Atari does and a lot of these other big companies. Because just last episode, we talked about Heavyweight Champ a little bit, and that one looked really good, even though we couldn't play it. But this one does not look good. I'm sure it was just like maybe even their like arcade division, like electromechanical division, and they just wanted to do another light gamer for some reason.
Right.
But I put it kind of pretty late in our timeline because it is a sequel to Bullet Mark, which also came out this year. But now that I'm looking at it, I think it might have came out much closer to Bullet Mark just because there's been no real addition that made. So
right, just sort of like an alternate version kind of thing.
Yeah, I really feel like maybe Bullet Mark came out, maybe they heard from people like, hey, this is cool, but like this is expensive, we can't put one in because it takes up like 15 feet of our
right.
arcade, and so they came out with this, and I don't think I would have rather play the big one. At least I think on the big one you had a seat on it. You could like sit down and shoot. On this one you're standing up using these attached guns to the cabinet. So yeah, not good. I would say pass on this.
There you go. That's our advice on if you hear anything about Tracer from Sega, just maybe give that one a miss.
Yeah. So I would say give most Sega games at this point a miss because they're all kind of light gun games that aren't very interesting. The only light gun game that I think has been interesting was actually Attack that we've done.
Yeah.
Besides the home console ones. So, and I'm not including the Interceptor and stuff. Like they have a lot more like video game gameplay to them. But
right.
This is basically just a shooting gallery. So, but let's move on. Hopefully, we'll come across some better games.
Yes. Yeah. Well, next up, we have a group of honorable mentions, all that are basically kits for making like home console versions of other games that were released by Advanced Electronics. First one we have up is Anti-Aircraft 1 and 2 by Advanced Electronics, and it was a kit builder that came out in 1976 where you could assemble a home console version of Anti-Aircraft by Atari. Version 2 just had a more advanced AI that would try and actually dodge your bullets.
I don't know how interesting that would be, but
it's worth mentioning.
I don't think I really enjoyed Anti-Aircraft when that came out. So
yeah.
But I guess playing at home is always better than paying money for it. But this next one I think would be really fun, which is Space Race, the kit by, again, Advanced Electronics. But this one you could build a home console version of Space Race by Atari, which, why hasn't anybody else done this yet? That was their second game, and it was such a good one, the Frogger type gameplay. It would be perfect for home consoles, but I don't think anyone's done it yet. At least on this one, if you had some experience with electronics, you could make it happen in your own home, which is cool.
And next up, we have Jaws 2, which was basically the same thing, except you could build shark jaws in your home. And it also had a 2-player version, which sounds like it would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, again, like, if people can do that, can make this little kit thing, someone needs to make it happen in a real console.
Right, yeah. And I think you're going to talk about a prime example of when that didn't happen coming up next.
Yeah, here's another bad one. TV Challenger 2000. It's a home console that came out October 20th of 1976, which was just we have that as a manufacturing date for one specific person's console, so it could have come out earlier, but we only have like a couple examples of this that have not been completely destroyed. So we know by October 20th, they were at least making them at that point. But this is by the company Super Electron. I think they might have come out with one console before this. I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure I remember that name.
Yeah, Super Electron is kind of a nice name, but this one, not a good console. I don't even know if this used I think it did use a no, it didn't. It does not use a chip. It uses discrete logic. So already, this is probably not going to be great because all the great consoles now are on chips. But this one, what made it so bad was there was no on-screen scoring, which in 76 is like, you got to have that,
Yeah.
Everything that comes out has that. And how could you not? So it has no on-screen scoring, and it's in black and white. There is sound, but it only plays 3 games: tennis, hole in the wall, and holes in the walls. It's called, where both players are holes. But yeah, it's like, no, that's all. We only have a single screenshot from the Pong Story website of the gameplay, which is just the tennis version. And yeah, I mean, you're looking at tennis, but with no score. So,
right.
Why did they make this? It was so late into 76.
Yeah, it feels like a 75 home console.
Yeah, it really does. And even just looking at the console itself, what it looks like, you do have detachable controllers, which is cool. But because it didn't have on-screen scoring, you had that weird scorecard on the console itself.
Oh, yeah.
That you would put a quarter on or something. It's like, well, what's the point of detachable controllers if I have to sit right beside the console to change the score? Yeah, it seems weird. So I don't know why that was so late, but it came out in October, so I don't know what they were thinking.
If there's anything good to be said about it, I do like that instead of thinking of another name to like catch or some of the other
Yeah.
double hole in the wall games, they're just like, what if we just added S's? And
Yeah, holes in the walls.
so good.
I don't know, but yeah, that was the TV Challenger 2000. They're going to continue making consoles, so we'll see if they can up the ante with the next one. I don't have a lot of faith in it from based upon this one, but
Yeah.
who knows?
All right. And next up, let's take a look at the next game I got to take a look at and play and review, and that is CoMotion by Gremlin, which came out sometime in '76. And if you'll remember, we just talked about Blockade by Gremlin, which came out in our last episode. And this, I'm guessing it came out pretty close to when Blockade came out, because it's basically a 4-player version of Blockade. And a lot of the flyers that are still available to look at show both the games kind of being marketed together. This basically looks like it was a cocktail table version that 4 players could play, all positioned around the table. And another notable feature of it that it had was that it had an attract mode where the 4 AI would kind of just be moving across the screen and an explosion noise would play whenever they hit something. So I don't want to go into the gameplay too much because, as we talked about, it's kind of a snake-ish game, and it's basically the same as Blockade, except there's more players. But the fact that there's more players actually does add some interesting dynamics to this that make it slightly different from Blockade. Since you have lives in this, like from where your snake or your Blockade starts, there's 3 arrows at the bottom of the screen, and those will disappear as you lose lives. But the way that it plays out, I don't want to say it's like Smash, but that's the best analogy I can think of. Everyone has to lose a life for the last person to win, basically. So like there could be huge swings if someone who only has 1 life left wins like 3 times in a row and just wins it all. So it has that interesting dynamic going to it. If 2 players, their arrows, which are at the front of their snakes, basically, if their arrows collide in the same space, they both die, which might have happened in a Blockade, but didn't mean as much as if 2 players get wiped out in the same time in a 4-player game. And also, when 2 or 3 players are playing on this cabinet, the missing player's arrow, or like if they're the 2 people who aren't playing, their arrows are still on the screen, and they're actually obstacles that you can just run into in the middle of the screen. Which it's interesting. I don't know if that's really like a good feature or bad feature, but it's cool that it's in there to differentiate it. And the coolest thing that I thought that the 4-player difference made, and it's weird because I don't know if it's a limitation of the hardware or what, but the whole game is slower when you have 4 people playing, and it gets progressively faster when you go to 3 people and then 2 people.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I think that's actually kind of cool.
It's really neat. And I say I don't know if it's a limitation of the hardware, but I'll get into when I'm talking about the sound. They all make different sound tones now, all 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering if like it just couldn't play the sounds fast enough or something. But either way.
Yeah, the sounds do go pretty fast in the other one.
They do. And they go up to that same speed once you have
right.
2 players alive.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no matter why they actually have that in there, it ends up being a really cool feature. So getting into my ratings, I did want to say, since we just so recently covered Blockade and Ben took a look at that, I'm going to go off of Ben's ratings for this. And since sometimes I end up being the bad guy of these games and I rate everything, not bad guy, I just tend to rate lower.
Yeah.
These might seem a little higher than what I usually rate, but I'm doing them relative to the Blockade scores that we just looked at. So for graphics, Ben gave it a 2.5 out of 10, or for Blockade, and I also gave it a 2.5 because the only real difference here that I think is a graphical improvement is the fact that there's the attract mode, which is really cool. So I was going to bump it up to a 3 because of that, but honestly, the fact that there's 3 or 4 players on the screen at the same time made me wish that they had more differentiation between the players, since you're all the same color and your arrows all look the same. So I kind of did like a plus 0.5, minus 0.5 for those 2 different aspects and just left it at a graphics 2.5 out of 10. For sound, though, Ben gave this a 3, and I gave it a 3.5, really getting up there.
Yeah.
Because I think it's not always the case, but in this, it being more complex and adding more sounds, I just think makes it even better. You have like 4 tones playing at the same time, so it's like hectic, but in a way that wasn't really annoying to me. I thought it was really cool. And also, this like getting a bit music nerdy, which you might appreciate, Ben. But I think when you only have 3 players left, it for some reason is in 3/4.
Right. Yeah, it'll feel like that.
And it's cool. I don't know. It kind of like feels off, but I like it. That like it, the tempo changes and like as it gets faster with the different amounts of players in there.
Yeah. Did you notice like sometimes when I was playing, it's probably even, or maybe it's harder or easier with the 4 player. I don't know, but sometimes like it would feel really disjointed between the tones, and then other times like it felt like an actual song was like being made like accidentally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I did get that kind of. I feel like I don't know. Maybe it was just the videos I watched and the couple times I played it, but to me it almost seemed like you were more likely to get something that sounded good when you had more of them going on at the same time.
Okay.
Which I could also see that going totally the opposite way if they just all clashed with each other. But
Right.
when I was listening to it, it was just like there was enough going on, and it was kind of like filling the space with all 4 notes alternating that, I don't know, I felt like it worked out really well. And there were some times where I'm like, oh yeah, this sounds like a theme for Blockade or CoMotion, even though it's just
Right.
these random noises being played.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
So I definitely did get that. And also there was a small improvement that in the attract mode, there was the explosion sound when you ran into, or when a player ran into a wall. But for some reason, I don't think it was in the game, which is a little weird that they just put it in the attract mode. But overall, I think the biggest improvement is just having the sounds for the 4 different players, and the fact that it changes speed when you get less and less players. For gameplay, Ben gave this one a 3, and I bumped gameplay up as well and gave it a 3.5. I think pretty much for the same reason that the sound is better in this, I think the gameplay is better. It's more hectic and fast-paced, but I still feel like you get the same type of gameplay if you don't like that fast-paced gameplay eventually, because there will only be 2 players left at some point, and the other players' snakes do disappear after they die, so the screen doesn't get too cluttered.
I like how since it's 4 player, like you and another person could team up and like try to box someone out. I think that could be really interesting, which you wouldn't be able to do if it's just 1v1 all the time, you know?
Right, yeah, and like I was saying, I think there's some games where like just slapping more players onto it doesn't really do much. But for this game, for whatever reason, it just feels like that jump from 2 to 4 adds like a lot more fun stuff that you can do. Yeah, like teaming up.
Yeah.
Like just some crazy mishaps because you run into your teammates and then they have to survive against a team of 2 or whatever. Like it makes it interesting. There's a lot more dynamics going on when you have 4 different people playing it. And overall, it just felt like it was different enough from Blockade, just adding those 2 extra players, that to me, it made it better. So that's why I gave it an extra 0.5 there for the gameplay. For relevance, though, it's a weird issue where Ben gave it a 8.5 and I gave it a 7 because this is a follow-up to Blockade. So I think even though I think all around it's a better game, even if you like the gameplay of Blockade better, when 2 players die, you're going to get that exact same gameplay anyway. So I think it's just kind of straight improvement. It's less relevant because it's not the first of like this snake type game.
Right.
But I did still keep it up at a 7 because I feel like any kind of iteration on this Blockade game, which seemed like it was very popular at the time and is going to help continue popularizing that snake type game, it's still got to be a little bit relevant. And also the fact that it's a cocktail table and 4 players at the same time, it's going to be a slightly different audience who's coming to play this game, and also more people can play it at the same time and engage in it. So not as relevant as Blockade being like the initial entry into this sort of snake subgenre that we're looking at, but still definitely has relevance in its own way. So overall, it's kind of anticlimactic, but Ben gave it a 4, and I also gave it a 4, since I think it's a better game but less relevant.
Hmm.
I think I would personally enjoy this game a lot more than Blockade, even just with those small additions. But I think just because it's less relevant, got to give it around the same overall score. But the additions they made, I think, really did improve it, with the possible exception of if 4 players are alive for a long time, there's a lot of clutter on the screen. But basically, just everything they did, I think, in this made it better.
Right. And I think it helped make what I enjoyed about Blockade better too. Like the sound design was one of the things I loved the most. And with 4 players and 4 different tones for each player, it's like that just got better with adding more players. And obviously the gameplay side of having, sort of team strategies and stuff like that, that also was just like straight better.
Yeah.
And made the game that I enjoyed. It was still the same game, but it was also had more going on. So yeah, interesting one. We'll see. I think I said it before, but there's quite a lot of clones of this. So will any of them do something different? I don't know. But they could just be like rip-offs too. So I'm kind of was interested to see that Gremlin was so quick to go on top of this second version that they had. And being in a cocktail table was such a great idea because then it's not 4 people right around the same screen. They each have a seat. It's comfortable.
Yeah, the format of it looks great, just with one person on each end of the table, like all staring at the screen in the center. It looks like it'd be so much fun.
Yeah, and a game like this doesn't really have an up or down, really, right? So you could look from the bottom and it wouldn't, or from the top, and it really wouldn't change anything, I don't think.
Right, yeah. I think they had them labeled as like, well, it's just relative, like up, right, left, down. But yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter which way you're looking. It's not like some people have to look at it upside down.
Right, yeah. So I thought it was pretty well done by them, considering it came out basically probably within a month of the last one, I'd say.
Yeah, either real close, if not like
at the same time.
If not at the same time, because I wouldn't be surprised if it was like the same hardware for CoMotion as Blockade. It's just like one was for a different type of cabinet, But we don't know exactly. But either way, yeah, it's awesome that they put both of these out, and they're both pretty good games.
Cool. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, I had a good time with it.
Let's move into the next one. I rated. This one was actually good.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. Thank God. Because otherwise, everything I would have covered today would have been terrible. But this is a game called Sprint 2 by Key Games. Came out sometime in 76. And I kind of saw it as the next generation of Grand Track 10. I feel like we might have already had that with like the indie games. We had like Indie, I think 800 and Indie 4 and stuff. But
yeah,
they were basically the same thing. This one's kind of the next gen to me because it was the first mass-produced, I think, Atari game, period, to have a microchip or a microprocessor in it. So with that microprocessor, it had so much more speed, so much more technical efficiencies, so that it could do a lot more. And I don't know if this version of Sprint 2 did the most with that new technology, but it did do a couple things different that I think helped it play a lot better. So a little bit of overview and background. The cabinet is kind of interesting. It has kind of like an indie stock car, but with flames just coming off the back of it on the sides, and it's really cool looking. They really definitely went heavy with the red and with the flames, and yeah, I think it's a pretty cool looking cabinet. The steering wheels look kind of weird. I think it's just the picture I'm looking at on the flyer, but it looks like they're kind of bumpy, but that might just be the picture. Getting into what the game is, you've got another kind of Grand Track 10 style game where it's kind of an overhead, top-down view of racing. You can see the whole track at once, so it's not like you're following the car or anything like that. And it kind of plays like RC car-like, it doesn't feel like real racing. There's not scrolling graphics, but what this game does do, it does do 2 things that I think really make it really cool. Number 1, you can pick your track at the beginning, and it's that same track for the whole playthrough.
Wow.
There's 12 tracks. They're all very different. So this is the first racing game where you really can pick your own track, and I love that because, racing games now, how many tracks they have is like one of the biggest issues with any racing game. Right.
That's like how you judge a racing game.
Right. Yeah. So being able to pick your own track, and there was what was the last one it did? What was it? I forget. But Le Mans.
Yeah, Le Mans.
Le Mans. With Le Mans, the track changed every lap, right, automatically. But that meant you didn't really get to feel out each track for that long of a time. You know, you had one lap on it essentially, and then it was gone. But with this one, you've got the whole game mode with that track, so it really encourages you to put in multiple quarters and play through these tracks, and you get a lot of time on each one. So you can really have your favorites. It is a 1 and 2 player game, so you can, you know, pick your favorite track when you're versing your buddy, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty cool because of that. And then the other really big innovation or thing that I really noticed about it, I think Chris mentioned this a little bit. I think his game, when he was on the podcast, he did Indy 4. I think he mentioned drifting, but I don't know if his game had it or if it was just one that I had sent him, like another video that had sound or something. But
Right.
Sprint 2 has drifting, and it seems like it's done really well.
Oh,
so
cool.
because of that, you can go around corners way faster. And in general, your car is moving way faster. So I think the skill level for a game like this went up a lot because you had that drifting. And I also think the excitement and gameplay went up a lot because if you were good, you could really go. So
Yeah.
I think that was kind of cool about it. Because it already was encouraging kind of multiple plays, I think you could get really good through the tracks. And one of the videos I was watching, some guy was just like, I mean, drifting through these corners like they were nothing. And yeah, it seemed pretty cool. I don't think any game I had played had drifting in it, any of the Grand Track games. But this one, it seemed like it was a big part of the gameplay. And yeah, it looked really cool. And obviously drifting is a huge part of driving games today. And, you know, one of my favorite things to do on them. So yeah, that alone, I was like, this is already an upgrade. But let's get into my my ratings. Let's start with graphics. This is probably one of the lower points in it. It's still black and white. And I'm like, really? You couldn't have done anything? By the way, you do have AIs when you're doing both 1 and 2 player. There's 4 cars total. There's a white car, a black car, and 2 gray cars. The 2 gray are always AIs. Player 1 is white and player 2 is black. And if you're playing a 1-player game, an AI will play as the black, and it's a better AI than the grays. So
That's cool.
it's kind of interesting. It's like you're still kind of versing black, and it's doing better than the gray ones, which gives you something to shoot for when you're playing. So that was cool. It was easy to tell which car you were in and how well you were doing versus the other cars, which is good. But the car models themselves still look like the bugs.
Yeah.
Which I was like, oh man, they couldn't have like done a little bit better with that. And it's still basically black and white. The tracks look a little bit better, I'd say, than before. You've got some, I don't know, I want to say kind of circle obstacles that are actual circles instead of little dots, which sometimes, well, in most of the tracks, the boundaries are just little dots. And that's the way it's been all the way from Grand Track 10. But having some circles every now and then, it kind of made it a little bit nicer looking. But still, I don't know. The graphics weren't the best of this. One weird thing that they did do was oil slicks. In the older games, you would just have like a kind of black part on the track, and it wasn't very clear what it was. This one, it actually looked like the Nickelodeon, paint splat or whatever that they have on their logo.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
It was kind of like that, and then it said oil on it. So you really knew. In the video that I was watching, the guy actually took off oil slicks because you couldn't go around the track as fast as you could if you kept hitting them, And I played this in an emulator, and the oil slicks really do get in your way quite often. So I don't know how, even though the oil slicks look better, it's like, yeah, but they don't really help the game. So I didn't really give it that much, but for a score for graphics, I left it at just a 2 out of 10. I mean, this still feels like previous gen when it comes to graphics. Same thing kind of with sound. You have your standard engine revving sound, but I still think it's not very good. It kind of reminds me of the older Grand Track 10 games. I think you do have a crashing sound. You do have a sound for drifting, which obviously comes into play quite a lot, and I'd say it sounds decent, but it didn't really add to the sound experience that much, in my opinion. So I just gave it a 2 out of 10 for sound. And for gameplay, this is the one that I actually was like having fun with the game. It just feels really good to play. You can go a lot faster. There's a lot more skill. Being able to select the different tracks, being able to race against AI opponents, and you can even, if you hit an AI, your car will kind of spin out a little bit like it does if it hits an oil slick, but they don't crash. So maybe, I don't know if that's good or bad, but interesting decision there. But the gameplay felt a lot better. I mean, it really did feel like a lot more fun than the Grand Track 10 games, mainly because of drifting. I mean, drifting really adds a lot to it. So I gave that a 4 out of 10. It was very fun to play. So, and then for relevance, I gave 8 out of 10. Another really high score, but drifting is so good. Being able to select tracks is so good. And versing AI, I mean, that's all the ingredients that you need. Now we just need like a behind the car camera and we're there, you know? But yeah, there's so many cool innovations they did, mainly to the gameplay side, that made this game way better and is going to make it really relevant, both in terms of what it actually did technically, and then also it does sell really well. They have a whole sprint line they're going to come out with, and it becomes, I think, one of Atari's better selling games in their early history. So it's cool. So 8 out of 10 for relevance. And then finally, a total score. I gave it a 4 out of 10. Very solid. Yeah. I was like, you know what? It just plays good. It's weird because you look at it for like a second, and you're like, that's Grand Track 10, you know? And then you play it, and like, it doesn't play anything like Grand Track 10 though.
Yeah, it sounds like they did so much with the gameplay of it just to make it feel more polished, faster, taking away all the things that made it so you just couldn't, it wasn't a smooth experience, you know?
Right. Yeah, it just felt way better. And it's weird. I remember Chris talking about Grand Track 10. I'm not sure if you could drift on that, but this one, it was definitely apparent that it was a large part of the game. And drifting felt different from just taking a corner at high speed, you know? It was actually like, it felt like the drifting that we all know in games today. So yeah, it was cool. It was cool to see that they really went with that angle. They kind of built on Le Mans by picking tracks, because that one was the first one where you could kind of see multiple tracks, but being able to actually pick it and be like, this is my home court advantage track. I mean, it adds so much gameplay. So, and even with the AI cars, there was a track mode on this too, by the way, which was kind of interesting to watch. But even with the AI cars, if you're playing 2-player and one person's just like smoking the other, like the other person could still be first in the AI cars and have a good time. So it just kind of had a lot of cool gameplay elements, and Atari, I think, is known at this point for focusing on gameplay more than graphics or sound design or some of the other things that we usually rate. And this is a prime example of them putting gameplay first. So yeah, I thought it was cool.
It sounds really awesome. Yeah.
I'm glad we got to end with that one and not Tracer.
Not Tracer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. Well, with that, are you ready to move on to our last batch of honorable mentions?
Let's do it.
So next up, we have F1, which is by Atari and Namco. It came out in November of '76. And it's an electromechanical racing game that used projectors, but really, we just included it because Namco is getting in on the gaming stuff with an original product they're working with Atari to distribute. And it's the same Namco that is now Bandai Namco today, so we're definitely going to be seeing a lot of them in the future. And then next up, we have King Kong by Fun Games Incorporated, which came out sometime in '76. And this was a game where you had to shoot King Kong in a plane while dodging him swiping at you and all that. Apparently, though, it bombed at the unveiling, so it was never released, which, I don't know, maybe it wasn't presented well, but that sounds like a fun game to me.
Yeah, it does. I've also seen it called King, and I've also seen it called Kong, and also King Kong.
Gotcha.
So,
Maybe it was a
Sometimes you'll see
branding
it
issue.
differently. Yeah, I don't know, but it does sound cool. But fun games, I mean, I don't really trust them. So that'll move us right into Bazooka by Project Support Engineering. We did mention them in our top companies of this past year. They made Maneater, they made Knights in Armor, and this is another interesting one. They basically saw Seawolf, and they're like, well, what if we did that, but we used a bazooka?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that actually does sound pretty cool. We didn't have video or emulation we could judge it off of, but we do have pictures of the cabinet, and the bazooka peripheral looks incredible. It's like massive.
Oh, nice.
I guess you have to look inside of some sort of visual tube or something when you use it. I'm not sure, but it's like a statement piece for your home or something if you were to have this. And I kind of love that. So definitely look up a picture of it because the bazooka is pretty crazy looking.
Yeah, it sounds pretty sweet. And last up, we have Fighter Squadron by Bailey, which came out in November. And this was a 2 versus 2 jet fighter type clone, but we really don't have that much info on it, and it might never have been released. Does sound like an interesting one, though, to get multiple players into the more than just a 1v1 in the jet fighter style game.
Yep. Another jet fighter clone.
Still doing it.
Why was that game so popular? I don't know. That's going to do it for us today. I hope you guys enjoyed our episode today. We talked about, the top company. Wes did decree that it was Atari again. They've retaken the throne.
So
then we played Lazer Command, great one by Meadows Games, Tracer, which you should not know about, CoMotion, the follow-up to Blockade, the Snake game, and Sprint 2, which was the next generation of Grand Track 10, in my opinion. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Next episode is going to be a really special episode. We're going to be checking out the Fairchild Channel F, the very first second generation home console. It's going to be incredible. So be prepared for that. And Wes, you want to take us out?
Yeah. So as always, make sure to check us out on Twitter. Send us an email if you have any questions. And remember to check out that newly updated and refined website that Ben just went through and worked on. Thank you guys so much for listening, as always, and we'll see you all in the next one.
See you next time.